This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speakers and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business.
Okay, so we are here today with Brandon, who is going to share his story about doing the landmark form at 13 and where that led him, which was pretty intensely involved in landmark from a very young age. So what we're going to be looking at today is what did they promise and then what did it actually create with terms like responsibility, integrity, completing the past, our stories, our rackets. Are those really tools for growth or did they become a kind of subtle control? So Brandon, I would love for you to just tell us, how did you end up doing the form so young and what did you want to get out of it?
Yeah, so I started the Landmark Forum. Well, I did the Landmark Forum because my mom did the Landmark Forum when she was a teenager. She did the S training, which is the prior iteration of the work that they have now. And she redid the whole Landmark curriculum, when she was and then I did it because she wanted me to do it to make a difference. And so I was 13, did the Landmark Forum. I was really shy, I was kind of mad at my dad and had, some incompletions with I was molested at a young age, so I had some of that. It was like a little bit of everything. And so I just, my mom really thought that it would make a difference for me, to do the Landmark Forum. And that's how I started participating. So I did it, and it was actually quite uplifting. I'm not going to lie. Like in the moment, as a 13-year-old, to find out that I'm the creator of meaning in my life, and and obviously, like I'm a big believer that the distinctions in the forum are not anything specific or special to Landmark, right? They didn't come up with these distinctions; they're pulled from different teachings and different things. So it makes total sense that when you do the program, you get you feel empowered, because it's a whole as a 13-year-old, right? I felt really like I had a new look on life, a new way to deal with what I was dealing with. And that was good. Everything was fine and dandy. I think it's what came after that. And when I started like volunteering my time and getting more involved, right? And then in a way, the distinction started to get used against me, right? In a way to like kind of to groom me to become what they wanted me to become, which is like the poster child for the forum, right, so to speak, for Los Angeles, because they didn't have a lot of teenagers that would go on and do other programs or continue doing more work or eventually working there, right? And so that's where I think it started to become more manipulative and more about their agenda, right? Which is I'll start with that.
Okay, so and just you did the adult form at 13, right?
No, I did the forum for teens.
Oh, you did the form for
Yeah,
teens.
the Landmark Forum for teens, and then I waited until I was 15. They wouldn't let me do the advanced course, right, until you were 15 years old. So I waited. I did it the weekend after I turned 15. I was
Because you're
really
so much more mature at 15 than 13.
right,
It's
yeah,
like you're practically an adult.
right, pretty much. Yeah, I do think they should have had maybe a advanced course for teens, but I think the truth of why they didn't is because there weren't enough people to register into
Oh,
the
for
courses,
sure,
right?
yeah.
It was more for them than it was for the people in it. But yeah, so I did the advanced course. I did the self-expression leadership program, which is their third program when I was 15, and then they have an introduction leaders program, which was really meant for 18 and older, but I really kept asking to be a part of that. But if people don't know what that is, that they're like intense leadership training program where they say they're going to train you to be a leader in life, but really are secretly training you to kind of be a leader for Landmark and lead programs for and introductions for Landmark, right?
And it's a 6-month,
And
really
it's
intensive
yeah, it's
program.
very intense. Like and I did that when I was 15 and I turned 16 in the program. I was in high school, doing that program. And so, but I was really all in it. I was so excited and gung ho. And like, I wanted to be a leader for Landmark. And, they had me start leading introductions about the Landmark Forum for Teens to teens when I was a teenager. So like I would be in high school and then I would come to the LA office and at evening lead like an introduction to other teams and try to get them to register. So I was really excited. The thing that Landmark's really good at is getting people excited for this big vision, right? This big vision of
Absolutely.
transforming the world.
Yeah.
And that they're going to make this huge difference on the planet. And if you're not a person who wants to make a difference, then what are you really up to? And you really get into it because at the end of the day, if you are an empathetic person, if you're somebody who, I guess, just really wants to help people, that sounds really great. Right. Like it sounds like, oh my God, like who doesn't want to do that? Right. And
That's what it
Landmark,
gave to me. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. A purpose and, like,
Yes.
changing the
A
world,
purpose.
helping
Yeah.
the world, transforming people.
Yes. And doing that when you're a
Incredible.
teenager, especially when you're younger, like when you don't already have any kind of I hadn't even created an identity for myself yet, right? Like my identity became, being a Landmark graduate and I was a transformed person. And for me at the time, I thought that that was in a way, like I was better than other people, right? That hadn't done the forum or
Yeah.
hadn't done the work especially other teenagers, right? Like I would see how teenagers were in my high school or how my friends were, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm special,
Yep,
and
I
Landmark
totally
really
relate.
made me feel special, you know, you really
And
were special.
how did that, transfer to your friendships? How were you in friendships with your peers?
It was okay. I think the thing I'm proud of myself, if I have to I'm proud that I never really, I don't know, I didn't let that impact my friendships, to be honest. Like I always knew it was a little weird, like the Landmark was something that people wouldn't understand, or that it was like, and I was in the introduction leaders program when I was in high school, and they wanted me to register my friends to come to introductions. But in order to do that, I also had to set up an introduction for their parents. And so, and like, I already in the back of my mind, I always thought, God, that's so hard. Like it's not me, an adult doing this program and me doing this program are not the same thing, but we had the same exact expectations. I honestly it didn't impact my friendships. I actually don't, yeah, I didn't do that. But, and then I had
Your
to talk
friends didn't think you were weird for doing it or
I didn't really tell them. I
Oh,
kept it more of a secret. Yeah, it wasn't like I'm like I didn't really tell them like, oh, I've done this great program, and I wasn't really this big Landmark advocate. I don't know, it was like I would tell Landmark that I was talking to my friends or that I was having conversations, but then I would just not have the confidence, honestly, because I knew it was weird to do it. And I did. I mean, I had at one point I was like trying to get my teachers to like talk to them about Landmark. And I do remember um, going and having conversations with my teachers and that being super awkward. And me just feeling like such a weirdo, talking to them about
yep,
this at the time, $500 program. But I did it because I was trying to be unreasonable, right?
yep.
Landmark has this distinction of being unreasonable, which it can be all of their distinctions can be valuable in certain situations. And if
Yeah.
I think if presented in the right way, but they also double as like a, you know, as like a way for you to push past what you're comfortable for and to like override that inner voice of yours, right? Like
Mhm.
so like the distinctions are very weirdly multi-purpose, and I think they were designed that way, you
Well, they
know?
yeah, they can be tools or they can be used as ultimate truths, which end up controlling and suppressing you, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, and so unreasonable for me was like, okay, push past your comfort zone or push past your little voice, right? Which is really like your internal voice, and but it was all in service of Landmark. That's the thing, right? It was all in service of me sharing the forum, me getting people to register, me. It wasn't anything to do with me having a breakthrough in my self-expression as a teenager, right? It was more about, well, how can we get him to do what we want him to do right when he's so young, right?
Mhm.
Because legally, right, they couldn't have my friends do the forum unless their parents did it too. And so it's almost like they
Right.
saw me as like a 2-for-1 special. They're like, oh, he can register 3 people in order to and so I do believe, yeah, it was weird because they had not really had a lot of teenagers do that program. It was like I was the second one to ever do it in LA at such a young age, so they didn't really know how to handle me.
And oh, so speaking of the legality of things,
Yeah.
how much were you assisting as a teenager? What did that look like?
Well, I assisted on the programs. I typically only assisted on the Forum for Young People and Forum for Teen programs, like on the weekend courses. And I always did it with my mom. So my mom was there with me, and they did require a parent to be with you. They knew somewhat, right? Like that they couldn't do certain things. Landmark is a very smart organization, as much as they, come off like they're not. They're very smart. So I was assisting with my mom a lot, and I'll tell you though, like assisting when I was younger, so I think where it went sour is when I started leading introductions when I was when I was like 16, 17 years old, and when I started going on staff, right? That for me is where I think I got the curtain was, you know, pulled back, and I started to see everything for more what it was. But the assisting on the weekend programs for me was a great experience because I felt like I was a leader and I got to be a production supervisor and like, do all these things. And I really felt that those things were good, and I,
I was
and
doing I was
yeah,
doing that too. I
right.
was a production supervisor at 15,
Yeah.
running
How
whole
funny.
forms for adult forms though. I did the adult form and then I was doing that for adult forms.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and I didn't
That's
have a parent with me.
yeah, that's definitely a different story. Yeah, it was okay. I didn't have any like thing with because I did only family programs, like I kind of kept my and because that was what I liked and what I loved and what I thought was really the future was helping other teens and young people, have get breakthroughs, right? And I honestly still believe that. I just don't think in that format, right? And in that intensity and with the manipulation behind it, right? I think any young person or teenager who goes to therapy or does any type of, like self-exploration is great, right? Because why wait till you're an adult? But
Mhm.
not in that environment, right? I look back on that now, but in the point is I was really like, okay, this is my future. This is what I want to do. I wanted to be a production or course supervisor in family division, right? And I was waiting till I was 18 to apply for that. And like I had this vision for myself that I wanted to be involved with the family division of Landmark. And then they got eliminated the family division completely like later on, right? And I was like, what about everything you just said about kids and the future? And like, it just felt like they ripped away everything they had said that they were for. And so that was
It wasn't
heartbreaking.
convenient anymore for them.
Oh, right, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. And then COVID just killed it, right? And they blamed that and said that was a big whatever, right? Who knows the real reason? The real reason is it wasn't making them enough money because Landmark only cares about making money. It's a money making company, and that's what they exist to do. So but yeah, family division for me. But then the thing is I went on staff, right? So I went on staff at 18. And when I went on staff, I was in the family division. I was the family division like manager and I was in charge of that for a while. But that's when they started the like pressure and the manipulation and the like it became no longer about like making a huge difference for these teens and young people that were about to do these programs. It was about you can't let them withdraw from a program. You have got to find a way to keep them in. You've got to collect their balance, right? It became a whole other game. And that was like, oh, like I was somebody who was really eager and wanted to make that difference. And like, probably was the best candidate for them, to be honest, but they were too good, too stupid to see that. They were just so set in their ways of doing business. So I think that very, very early on in my staff, being a staff member for Landmark, I knew something wasn't right. At the time, I thought it was my center manager, right? And I said something to HR at the time about that because I thought, oh, she's not the work, right? She's not what this is about, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
I
She
couldn't.
was an anomaly.
Yeah, correct. I thought, oh, she's the bad apple in the bunch, and um, was met with a lot of like, no, that's not what's happening. You're the problem. You look within. What's going on with you? Who are you being that? And so I don't know. Like I feel like I was just this innocent child on staff wanting to make a huge difference and being like basically shown how it really was, but not wanting to admit or like accept that. And I think that was really what you're bringing this up for me now that I'm talking about it. But like that was probably the whole 4.5 years of me being a staff member is dealing with the heartbreak of like God, like really realizing that what you gave your whole like childhood to and everything, right? Like everything you thought it was is not what it was, and still trying to fight for, well, no, it really is this way. There's just this, and this that don't work, right?
Yeah,
And
if I
then,
can only fix it.
yeah, if only like they would listen to me about like, well, this policy doesn't really work or this does, and I really went for it the whole 4 years. And then till the point where I really realized I wasn't going to win, right? And that I think I was just really heartbroken. It's like it was like losing a partner, I guess, that you thought was some way, and they showed you who they really were. Um, so I think that's what my 4.5 years of staff was like, wow, like I love this organization so much. I love the vision. I love what it's about. I want to transform the world. But then I kept seeing everything but that inside, right? Like
Yeah.
internally and on staff in the day to day and the people I interacted with and the forum leaders and like how they were behind closed doors and just interacted with each other. And none of it matched what they were saying out in the world. And that's really hard to be with, when you've been in it at such a young age, when you've given your entire, or you thought your entire life and identity was being a graduate of this work.
I feel like it's kind of akin to finding out God doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like when people are like, yeah, like the people, like in the church, you're right.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
people that give their whole lives to that. It's the same. It's the same, I think, with any high control group, right? In Scientology and like anything that you really believe in.
For me, it was I was only lasted like 3 or 4 months on staff
Mm,
because like, coming into it, I went right away to a staff training in LA where
mm,
it was like, I think it was around maybe 2002, and they went, "Okay, no more processing, we're just gonna get to work. We're just gonna
yeah.
get to work," and, like, I'd spent, my whole teens,
Uh,
here I am, like, 23 years old being like, "No, no, I'm a master at processing, like, that's
uh,
what this work is about, like, it's about being with each other and creating who we're being."
uh,
And they were like, "No, just ignore that. We just need to, like, nose to the grindstone, get these registrations, get this," and it was like, and I remember, like, that's all I actually remember of that weekend being there. I don't remember anything else because I think my brain just started to shut down and was like, "Oh, fuck. What
yeah.
what have I gotten myself into?" And then I
Mhm.
spent 3 months being trained at the center and just my body went into collapse. It was like I could barely stay awake. I
Yeah.
was just exhausted and, like, depressed, and the reality of it was all of a sudden there, and I was like, "This it does not match to the experience that I thought I would be having or creating."
Yeah. 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 And I honestly think that at some point every staff member realizes that. It just depends on how fast, and how long it takes, right, to have the realization.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I just had so much, childhood trauma that was unresolved, and that was a huge part of, you know, what I think was detrimental to me from
yeah.
Landmark, is that I had really intense childhood trauma that needed proper trauma therapy
Yeah.
instead of just piling responsibility and completing the past and
Mhm.
bullshit like that on top of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was just still under there bubbling and brewing until I, as a,
Yeah.
40-something-year-old, finally started to handle it.
Yeah.
How did you find that with your childhood trauma and having the distinctions to work with it? Did that
You know, I did therapy. This is the thing. I was in therapy with for the only I had a pretty good childhood. I'm not gonna lie. Like I didn't have like a lot. I had a great mom. My mom and dad split when they were young, but I had a lot of love from both of them. Like I didn't ever have that. The only thing that had happened to me was, like I said, I was molested by my cousin. And that for me made me really afraid of like older teenage boys and like being around that, and so that, but I was in therapy for my mom had put, because my mom was always a big advocate for therapy, Landmark, whatever, right? It's not like she was
That's
a big,
great.
like, only Landmark, which is great, yes. But
Amazing.
my
That's
mom,
not the average.
right. No, it isn't. No, my mom is
Yeah.
not the average. And my mom has always been like spiritual journey. Like there's just all these different ways to getting help, right? But for her, so she had me go to therapy, and I was in therapy for a little while before I did the Landmark Forum. And that I think was when I started to unpack and kind of the molestation part. That was the biggest thing for me, right? That I was dealing with at the time. And so I think because I was in therapy and I stayed in therapy for a little bit after I did the Landmark Forum, that I was able to, maybe it didn't impact me the same way, right? It didn't stay with me. The
Yeah, you got the work you needed, and if you were doing Landmark at the same time, I imagine you could have taken the distinctions and things you were learning and talked to your therapist about that
Yeah,
too.
like, and
Yeah.
I did, and I shared with them, like, and yeah, and it really kind of like how did it disappeared for me, like I didn't, it wasn't something that was in the forefront of my life anymore. And so I think I was lucky in that regard because, like, again, most parents, I think, put their children in the Landmark Forum to like fix them or to have them deal with all their stuff, right? And Landmark really actually even says like that that's not what they do, right? But the thing that makes me so mad about Landmark, let's be real, is that they say that, right?
Yeah.
They say this is not therapy, this is not da da da. But then they sure as hell act like you are fixed and like whole and transformed after that forum. You
And it's
know,
all you need.
that's really, and you just got to keep practicing the work by doing the seminars and the advanced course and the curriculum and the ILP and the communication courses. And if you do all of that, you're considered a great graduate who's really gone to work on things. But in none of those courses are there trained professionals who deal with, like you said, trauma or things that, and a lot of their distinctions and stuff are outdated. Like a lot of their, there's so much new research and stuff in the last 15, 20 years that has come out about the brain. And like, they're not, they don't
No,
have any of that.
no, like they don't even realize that our circumstances and environment lead to our experience of life. They
Yeah.
want to just completely ignore any sort anything outside of your own responsibility, right? You are the center of the universe and control everything. Your circumstances don't matter.
Again, that's one of those distinctions that can be used in two different ways, right? Like it taking 100% responsibility for things is good in certain situations, but
Hmm.
not when it comes to you being like, molested or like when they do choice, for example, there's a distinction in the forum choice, right? Like choose. And people go around the room and say, I choose my rape or my whatever because I choose it. And I can get how that occurs freeing and everyone claps and it's all like, ha, 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 oh great, look at this powerful thing. But then also it's like, yeah, but you still have to deal with that, right? Like your body hold on to stuff. Like you
Exactly.
yeah, so and but I've only started to realize that in the last few years, like in the even honestly in the last 6 months, about where it's been stored in my body. With my weight, for example, like I didn't even realize I could never figure out why because I was never overweight when I was young. And I put on most of my weight when I started working at Landmark and in the evenings I would eat, before bed and whatever. And then it followed me after I left, but I never could figure out, I'm like, why do I have this issue? And so just honestly, even a couple months ago, I realized I was using, I think in my interview with Anne, if you saw it, I said I used Chat GPT to kind of start unpacking some stuff and it can be, that's quite useful. But I saw that my weight, what it said is my body was protecting itself, right? My that vulnerable 18-year-old kid who was on staff, that got screamed at and told all these things, had to protect itself in some way. So it did the only thing it knew possible, which is to put on the weight. And ever since I've seen that, I've lost 20 pounds in the last like month and a half. Like
Oh,
it's been easy. And but why I'm saying that is that you don't realize like that trauma is stored in the body, right? And Landmark will never say that, and I don't think they even use the word trauma. Like
I don't, they don't care what's happening in your body. I feel like
no,
Landmark taught me to live from here up. And
right?
it wasn't until I started doing somatic experience therapy about a year and a half ago that I
Uh,
realized I have a body and it tells
uh,
me things
uh,
and it's actually quite important to listen to.
yes, yeah, you're trained to ignore your body, yeah, and in more ways than one, right? And even when I don't know if they told you the same thing. I know you were only on staff for a few years or for a few months, but when we were sick, Landmark would say, "Well, you're not sick. Sick is a story that you just have symptoms," and that for me was like, okay, but so then it's like, well, then just powerfully deal with those symptoms, right? Like you don't have to call off work. You can deal with your cough or deal with the headache and it's like even that, for me is a little weird.
Oh, totally. And for the sick thing for me was like, well, what are you resisting? If you're sick,
Yes.
it must be because you're out of integrity or you're
Yes.
resisting something. So let's process you to get to the
Yes.
bottom of it.
Integrity was always the reason for anything. God forbid you're just sick, or God forbid you're dealing with, like, being tired or something because you're working,
Overworked.
60 hours, 70 hours a week, right? Yeah, I mean, it was never any of that. No, it was all how you looked at it and how you reacted to it. So, but in the moment, and it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, and to me, looking at it now, it sounds crazy. It sounds very textbook, like, like, of like what even abusers do, right? Where they're like, "Well, you made me do that to you," or "What were
Yeah.
you?" Right? But in the moment, you're really like think you're in this training program because you get so good at thinking that they're like master trainers. And so you are like supposed to be coachable, right? If you want to be, if you really are up for something in your life, you're expected to be coachable. And
Hmm.
so that means like literally taking on anything that anyone says to you and trying it on or doing it, right? And if you don't do it, find out what's in the reason. Why were you not able to do that? And so you think you're in this like training program or game, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm a really great person. But really what it is they're just sometimes, listen, I hate to say this, but sometimes people are just assholes. What they say
Absolutely.
to you, you're gonna say, you know what? No, just fuck off. Like in a way. I mean, I
Yeah.
not to cuss, but you kind of have to. And that's what I've learned now. I mean, I know that now as a 31-year-old person, right? Sometimes people just are out of their freaking minds with what they think they can say to you. But if it's in Landmark and they're a leader or a forum leader or whoever, oh, you can't question that. You're not supposed to. And if you do, you're really dealt with. Like you said, processed, like
Yeah.
processed for hours,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and it's oh, I just lost what I was gonna say there, and then it went away. Um, oh yeah, there you're not allowed to have boundaries. It's
Uh,
like
no.
there's boundaries are shunned upon. If you put any sort of
Yes.
boundary up, it's like, well,
Yes.
again, what are you resisting? Why?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to just be this like open vessel,
Yeah.
constantly just absorbing, I don't know, form leader greatness. Like, how did you look at staff members and form leaders before you went on staff?
Oh, they
What
were
was
like
that like?
gods. They were untouchable, like highest possible being, but because Landmark told me that, right? Landmark told me
Mhm.
that forum leaders, in order to become a forum leader, had to do this 500 question checklist and had to get everything complete with their lives and had to be at nothing and like this. So you think of them as like a guru. I mean, you are trained to think of them that way, and because you're like, these are really people who are, have really worked on every bit of their life, right? So oh no, I was scared to talk to forum leaders. Like when I first started on staff, I remember the person that was training me I could not go talk to a forum leader by myself. I was scared because I was like, oh my God, like I was afraid
Yeah.
of people. Very, I found out that that's not the case. That they're literally just people, right, who are sucked into the same thing and just at a different level,
Yeah.
if not more, right? They're probably they're probably, I'd say, the group of people that are more in a cult than anyone, right? Because of the way in which they, idolize Warner and go to these trainings and from what I've heard from forum leaders get yelled at, and it's okay because it's in it's just they are so deep in it that they can't see it. And I don't blame the forum leaders, right? I don't blame these human beings who at some point like us wanted to make a difference, right? But yeah, no, I idolized staff members. That white name tag,
Yeah.
which was the staff, you would see somebody with that on and it was like it gave you a status.
Reverence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could not wait when I was on staff to get the white name tag. For
Yeah.
me,
Same.
a name tag, I made myself a temporary one that looked like the real one because I was so eager to have that name tag. You put
Yeah.
that on and you are everyone, and a lot of graduates look at you differently. People look at
Yeah.
you differently.
You're
You're,
all of a sudden one of the elevated ones, right?
yes,
You've stepped into the ultimate transformation world. You
yes,
operate on a higher level than
correct.
everybody else now.
That's correct. And they do tell people that, and it's supposed to be like an honorable thing. But they don't have a really great vetting process too for who they hire on staff, right? Who they hire are people who are willing to work 70 hours a week and be yelled at, and or who are really wanting to make a difference, right? That's who they hire. So you get people who put that name tag on and then abuse it and start treating people badly and poorly and yelling and doing all the things. And Landmark goes, good job. You're a really great leader. Yeah, use that pressure, use that screaming, that's great. They almost like that. They want you to become that. And if you're not, I've told this to me and a former staff member in LA, we're talking about this. They the staff journey is like they want to see how much you're willing to give up of yourself to become what they want you to become, right? And if you are willing to do it and become who they want you to and abuse people and yell at people and whatever, then they promote you, right, to center manager and then eventually center's division director. And then you're an executive because you're willing to just keep going. And at some point when you're not, then they find a way to get rid of you and they fire you, which is what happened to me. Honestly, they did find a way to get rid of me because as I got older, I started mouthing off more. I started questioning things. I started like fighting with my center manager because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And, oh no, that's like, oh no, we got to he's not in it for what we're here for. We got to get rid of him. So, but the name tag thing is like, it's so crazy how you can understand that, right? Because it's like that name tag, that white name tag
I still
was,
have mine somewhere.
oh, I still have mine too, and gosh, like I'm like, I went through it. I have proof, you know? Um, but yeah, so anyways, that was to answer your question about how I saw staff.
Do you feel like you were taught how to be authentic, or did you feel like you were more like
Uh,
performing being transformed?
oh no, it was a performance. Yeah, it was almost a formula because they taught you how to share. In the introduction leaders program, they train you how to like do a vivid share.
Hmm.
That's like their method for, really creating a good share, right? It's all about being how that's, I mean, being authentic, that's being authentic, right? For them is really crafting a really good share and having the way in which you speak, right? Has got to be very enrolling, right? Being enrolling or getting people to really, I don't even know what the normal terms for enrollment is, but
Able to manipulate people into doing what you want?
how manipulative you are, how charming you are, right? Like whatever that
Yeah.
is, that's called being authentic. I think, I think, I would say, I'm trying to think what authenticity for me is more being honest, like being honest about where you're at, being honest, honesty, I think is the better word, that
Mhm.
gives you power in life, at least for me, right? Because I feel like I'm a very honest person and I am real. I keep it real, but authentic became like a landmark
It's like a
thing.
dirty word.
Yeah, like and inauthentic, right? Then they go, you're being inauthentic, or that person's not, oh, it was such a big word that they liked to throw around along with integrity and racket. Like there were some of them, those 3 or 4 different distinctions that they would use. They could really use it almost to manipulate you to do anything. Or have you think that you're the problem.
Yeah. And it's hard because we go from being these kids that are the stars, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
praised and just the love bombing that
Yeah,
happens
the
and to
love bomb.
think you're like so special
Yeah.
and then to really not be special.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. The moment you go into any leadership position with them, or if you stay long enough, you become another body, and then it takes a while to realize that though. And that's where then I think, it takes people, or it took me at least 4 or 5 years to realize that that's what it was, and so, yeah, it is that. It's the love bombing, which there was a lot of as a teenager.
Yeah. And not just from staff, right? Like everybody just,
No, everybody thought you were amazing. Oh, you're so amazing. Look how young you are. And like, God, teenagers are out there doing drugs and you're over here transforming the planet. And God, it was always, or the whole, like, can you believe how young Brandon is? People would go to other people and go, guess how old he is? He's only 15 or 16 or whatever the age was, right? Until
yeah.
it wasn't cute anymore. But even then it was pretty cute up until like 21, and then then people didn't say it as much. 'Cause
Like
then
I'm an adult now,
yeah,
thanks.
But 21 is still impressive to be a staff member, right? I was on staff at the time. So then it was like, God, he's so young to be on staff. So that followed me for a long time. And then I continued assisting or volunteering after I left staff. I kept going for up until like 2 years ago. Honestly, I was still doing like advanced course registrations during the Landmark Forum on the Sunday nights
So
because
what had
I,
Oh,
yeah,
finish what you're saying.
I was saying I did it for my own like ego, right? I really loved being loved and in charge, and I also wanted to like prove to them that I was still able to like make a difference or make manage stuff because I got fired, right, for not meeting my targets. Which is how everybody gets fired. A lot of people, it's all BS now, but at the time, it's like really real. So
Their targets are insane, right?
the targets are insane, and they can be like, yeah, and they can give you bigger targets, and like the way in which they fired me was just so like crazy because they gave me all of these measures, all of these targets to meet that I had never had prior, right? Like they were like, Phil, you got to put 20 people on your volunteer team, your assisting team, in the next 3 weeks. Like something that it was just so they made it so that they could get me out of there. I was smart enough to realize that in the moment, and so I just played it out at the end of staff. I really was like, I already was looking for another job. I was like, I realized like I'm not going to win because they didn't want me to. So, but yeah, the targets are insane, and they want you to expand without giving you more support because it was at the time a volunteer based organization for their labor. That most of what they wanted you to rely on were people volunteering their time to make phone calls and to complete tasks that you had to complete. In LA, we had it's one of the largest centers, right? And we did a bunch of like when we had a new center manager come in, he was a forum leader. We did an increase. Like the year was a really good year. The first year, we did this huge increase in sales and targets and whatever. And then the next year, we're expected to do a 5% increase on top of that. But they wouldn't let him hire anyone else. You couldn't hire more staff people, right? Like any business that's expanding hires more, invests more, right? Does more, gets bigger space, right? And they wanted to do it with the same amount of people. They just wanted us to recruit more people to assist, right? And volunteer, which is hard to do. It's really hard to do. So then we were dealt with about that it's us and why are we not able to and what's in the way and blah, blah, blah. So it was just like it became crazy. It's like how do you expect growth also when you're not growing, your team, right? Strange. And the amount of hours too that they wanted people to assist was just like, insane too. Like there were positions that were 24 hours a week for assisting in the family division, right? Like there was like you had to find somebody to be a source person, which is somebody basically who's like retired or doesn't have a job to come in and do free labor to make phone calls, manage the courses, do all the work that a staff member would do, right? They wanted you to have two of those people for 24 hours a week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's crazy though, because there are people
Yeah.
who don't work and spend like I know like a handful of them in the Vancouver Center who just spend every free moment at the center helping however they could.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it becomes almost like a way to avoid, I think, what's going on with them, in
Hmm.
their life,
Life.
and because the thing that Landmark doesn't do too, or didn't do in my center was they didn't really, I don't know, they expected like the staff to come up with a breakthrough for this. They wanted us to come up with like, what are you committed to in this assisting agreement with me? Like you're gonna leave. They promised that you would leave getting 10 times more out of it than you put into it. Right? That's their big phrase, or was their phrase. They don't have it anymore, but their phrase was that, but they never delivered on that. They never delivered on what would 10 times more value be. Right? Now, for somebody who doesn't have a job and is working 30 hours a week or for free, right? I would think that they would eventually go get a job, right? Or that Landmark would be like, hey, how many
Yeah.
interviews are you going to go on this week, right? Like, what are you committed to with getting a job? That's not the case. It's like, oh, no, no, let's use them for this assisting agreement and maybe they can do this. And then everybody would try to get that person to do multiple different departments and different things and until they left, right? They just used them up until they were done. And then you would think that person left. You're like, oh, well, they must be incomplete about something. But on to the next one.
Yeah, they're running some racket or whatever, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, God,
Yeah.
how could they leave incomplete like that? And then you judge them, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. You
Yeah,
get to be superior.
yeah,
Yeah. More
yeah, oh, yeah,
transformed.
yeah,
And I think like something that makes me think about is how I don't know if Landmark has ever really invested in you like getting tangible things.
Right.
Because if you got the things that you were working on, then when you wouldn't need the other course. Like the amount of people I know
True.
who've been doing courses to have a relationship,
Yes.
staff members who
Right.
have been single for decades, people who have like wanting to their passion, like being a singer or an entrepreneur or whatever. And it's just, it never happens, even
Yeah.
though they've done every fucking course known to man inside of
Right.
Landmark.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. I've seen people who are like have done a lot of courses and a lot of, introduction leaders, people who I know one person that comes to my mind, it's a girl that I know and I'm like she still struggles every day with like relationships and like things that she was dealing with before she did any of those programs. Because the thing is that landmark programs too is you can become a little bit addicted to being in them for the way it makes you feel
Yeah,
right in the
absolutely.
moment. I mean, and what landmark used to give people, which is this like sense of purpose and this community, right? So
Mhm.
you in a way can very much avoid some really big things that you are dealing with. You can and you learn too, like you learn how to say the right things and how to like present your issues in a way where you are like if you can learn how to talk the landmark talk to get yourself out of actually having to go do that. Like you can say like, oh, well, I'm really committed to like finding a relationship and I can really see that what's stopping me is my resistance to blah, 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 blah. And the seminar leader or program leader will go, good, good. That's really good. And use you as an example to what everyone else should do. But then you could say that in 5 seminars. And they actually, I think, prefer that people share, that they keep people keep having the same issues because otherwise they would have nothing to work with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if somebody came to the seminar and was like, you know what, I got every single thing that I wanted, right, in that last seminar, and I'm going to take a break. I've had people say that. I remember people saying, you know what, I'm going to take a break right now because my life is just going really well. You're trained to like get them to not to do the next program, right?
Yeah.
Not like, oh, good for you. Come back, and let us know in 6 months how that's going. It's like, well, no, no, no. You wouldn't have that if it wasn't for
Yeah.
us.
And you'll lose it. You
And
might
you'll
lose it.
if you're not practicing, the best masters always practice, right? Always they use that whole thing about like the master basketball players who look back at their footage after a basketball game, right? To improve. First of all, those are two different things, right? Like basketball players perfecting their craft as a player does nothing to do with like people dealing with like stuff in their life. It's two different things, right? Um, right now, I have my own business. I sell houseplants. I go live on TikTok. I watch my live sales back sometimes because I want to see, like how I am and like what can I, what maybe I did something that didn't really work for me. But that's different, right? Than like continuing to do all this personal inward development, and never accomplishing anything. So yeah.
Yeah. And um, did like did you ever feel like the people above you were really, um, I don't know, were like going to work on themselves? Like, did you
No,
ever feel
no,
like that? Like they were sharing things and you were like,
no.
yes.
No, never. That was the funny part, right? The higher up people, even the forum leaders, like what didn't. They really didn't. No, and especially my center manager did not at all. In fact, it was the opposite. And once in a while, he would, right? He would like share something and but no, never accomplished anything. I mean, these people though have also been like working for Landmark for 20, 30 years. A lot of the leadership has been there their whole lives, right? Their
Mhm.
lives. So what do they have to work on? They all their whole life is land.
Right. Right.
They
Yeah.
don't
They
have
don't have
anything.
anything.
There's nothing. Like what is their breakdown is that they didn't meet their target or that their
Yeah.
staff didn't fulfill some target. That's their breakdown. So they don't have any tangible like thing to share that's like amazing, right? They're not out in the world.
That's
Because
such a
if
good
they
point.
were, yeah, the people who had probably the most inspiring shares are, in my opinion, honestly, were the self-expression and leadership program leaders. The people
Mm.
because they were, first of all, they weren't getting paid, right? They actually were out in the world. Most of them had really nice, really good careers, or even some of the seminar leaders, right? Like the people who were in the world, like doing stuff, they had really good stuff to share
Well,
because
and SELP is about creating projects in the world, right? So it's very specifically about going out out of Landmark into your community to
Yeah.
create something.
But still, right, with a hint of still enrolling people in the Landmark
Oh,
Forum,
of
right?
course, of
Like
course.
a manipulative, like, let's create a project. It's going to be really great. Everyone's going to want to know why you did that. And so then you'll share the forum with them. But I'd rather that than like just doing the forum and going, go tell everyone that your life is a source of this, right? Like, I'd rather there be a project in the world, right? And something,
Mhm.
there have been some amazing projects that still are to this day. And yes, but then Landmark likes to slap their name on it and take complete full ownership of that and be like, well, this project exists in the world because of us. And they do that with a lot of stuff. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
is horrible.
Well, it's not even just projects. It's like any
Right.
success you have, right? Is that's because of us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything, not because of you or because of like, and even with me, I became that with my plant business being successful. Like, and when I was still volunteering, a couple of years ago, I went up to the microphone and I would share that me doing the advanced course was the real reason I was able to have the success I have. What is it, 10 years later? But no, more than that. I'm older than that. 15 years later, like anything that I ever do in my life that's successful or good is going to be because I did the Landmark Forum or advanced course when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I believed it. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really believe it fully, but I really loved how much praise I got and how much like, um, love I got from the forum leaders about like when I was doing well, right? They were like, oh my God, that's just so great. You're so great. We love you. So proud of you, right? It's like, oh wow, and these are people I've known since I was a teenager, right? Telling me that they're proud of me or that they're happy for me or, and then I saw quite a few forum leaders who didn't care to even ask what I was doing, right? In my life when I would go volunteer. They just cared about me managing the event. Like, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, like I've known you since I was a teenager. Didn't even bother to ask, like, what are you doing nowadays? Right? Like, what are you up to? Didn't
Yeah.
even care. We're so in their own world. So yeah, I mean, everything being a source of landmark, and that's the way that they control, right? That's the high control. That's what anybody does. It's nothing unique. It just seems different because it's a transformative program. So you think that they really do care or that they're really out to make this difference.
You can trust them, right? That's the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's like this feeling of, for me, it was, yeah, a feeling of ultimate trust. Like my mom and my
Yeah.
sisters trusted them. So of course I would. And it also made a huge impact from them, us coming from a really traumatizing experience to
Yeah.
them doing this really uplifting thing that gave them energy and passion and self-expression.
Yeah.
And I watched them, like they did it when I was 8. And so I watched them for years,
Yeah.
assist and do the IFLP, and I was like, I want to be a part of this group.
Yeah.
Like I want in. And of course I would completely trust
Yeah.
them. Like,
Why? Yeah.
why wouldn't I?
Right. Yeah. No, I know. Me too. I mean, my mom had me come to an introduction, I think when I was like 10 or 11, and I ran out crying, because I was the only one there and it was this creepy guy and I just didn't like him. I got a really bad energy from it. And so I resisted doing the landmark forum actually for like 2 or 3 years, because of that experience.
Wow.
She brought me to some event and there was no other young people that had come to the introduction. Right. And so, but they still did it. They took me out to the office and I remember being in an office. I still remember it. Like I can still see the picture in my head. Trying to lead an introduction to the landmark forum and asking me very like, um, intense questions about my life, right? Like when I was 11, like, well, how does
Without your mom there?
I think she was there. I think she was in
Okay.
the back of the room, but it was, or maybe, yeah, I don't remember. I'm sure she was there. I remember her being with me, but no, maybe not, because I don't think with the young people introductions that they had the parents in the room. I think she was outside of the office, right? And so yeah, it was like I got scared. I remember literally like crying, like running out crying, because it's a lot. It's a lot, at that age to with somebody you don't know who's a volunteer, not even a
Yeah.
trained professional.
No idea how to work with children.
No. And so it was just like, I wasn't actually as trusting of the whole thing until I was a teenager. And the only reason I did the Landmark Forum was because I was being homeschooled at the time. And I had these packets of homework that I had to complete every week. And I didn't want to do them. And my mom said, if you do the Landmark Forum, if you register for the Landmark Forum, you don't have to do your packets this week or something. Like and I was like, fine. So she really, that was how I remember it was, I remember where I was in the hallway of our apartment and she said that and we were arguing and she said that and I was like, fine. So I registered for the forum. And then obviously, I mean, like I said, I did it, and at that time, I was about to go into high school. I was really shy. It made a difference for me when I was a teenager. I cannot say that it didn't,
Hmm.
but what I'm now looking at it, God, how many years has it been? 18 years later, like it, Landmark, Landmark wanted me to, what was I trying to say? Sorry. Landmark kind of was in a way setting me up for a lot for the future, right? Like for everything else that was to come, right? If I was willing to keep going, right? So if I had just stopped at the forum, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. Like I don't think neither of us would if we all made
Yeah.
a Landmark forum.
Yeah.
It's when you keep participating, right? That it then gets you. But that's what they do. I mean, that's what Scientology does, right? They have courses. They have really great courses, apparently, about communication, and they have things you can do, and you could never get involved. Some people never get involved in Scientology the way other people do,
Yeah.
right?
Same with
But
Nexium, right? Like some people just did the courses
oh,
and got stuff out of it and
right.
didn't become a part of the sex cult.
Right, right. And then
Yeah.
and I guess in the same way with like certain churches, right? You could either just go to Sunday service or you right, you get more involved or whatever. And so it's when you get more involved, which is what they want. I mean, Landmark wants every graduate and every person to get involved and, keep volunteering and keep doing all this stuff for them because of course it makes them more money, right? And but they don't pay their staff members well. They don't, they pay themselves really well. Executives make a good amount of money, but other than that, everyone else does not.
No,
So,
I think when I worked it out with all the volunteering on top of my job
oh
I
yeah,
did, I made well below minimum wage.
yeah. 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 And then they expect you to, like, in weird situations too, where you're like, you assist in your own department, right? Like when you're working there, because you have met your target, right? They're like, well, we're not going to pay you overtime. So they would say all the time, like, if you want to assist in your own department, that's fine. But if you can't get this complete by this specific time, you're still expected to do it, right? Like, like, there's this pressure on you, like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to assist in my own department because, I don't want Landmark to get a wage violation, right? Like you're putting the company at risk. If you, it was always that world of like, you wouldn't want transformation for the planet to go away, right? You,
Hmm.
you feel a really big weight on your shoulders of like, you are going to take down the enterprise if you don't take your meal break. They would
Yeah,
say things like that, you
and
know?
like you're creating peace on earth pretty much, right?
Yeah,
Like what you're doing is the answer to all our problems.
right.
So, of
Yeah.
course.
Of course, yeah, but then they also don't do a great job at making sure that you take your breaks or that you are taken care of. They have you waive in California. You can waive your right to a second 30-minute break, and so we would all do that. We all signed that waiver. So we got one 30-minute break, right, in a 12-hour shift. You know, the 15-minute and the 10-minute breaks that were required were never monitored, so you didn't take them, right? You'd take them at your desk, right? Well, you'd be eating something like that's not a break, right? That's not a so they could care less about that unless they got in trouble because there would be times where people would work well I thought it's funny, I thought it was because they were getting in trouble, but the truth is they didn't want to pay the overtime, right, that they were required to over a certain number of hours. So they would really come down on you if you worked over, I think it was like 65 hours or 70 hours, because that meant they had to pay you more, right? And so but you were
That's
trying to
so
always,
many hours
yeah,
already.
oh, I know. It's 2 jobs, right? That's 2 full-time jobs pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and like I said, I mean, I was being paid less than $40,000 a year when I first started. But when you're 18, you think that's a lot of money. You're like,
Mhm.
"Oh my God, that's a great salary, right? And I have benefits."
Yeah, totally. Coming
Yeah,
right out of high school, you've got this secure
yeah,
job that's gonna
yeah,
be for your entire future, you
of
know?
course, yeah, great training and, um I will say it was good training in more ways than I thought. I thought it'd be really great training. I also thought that that's how companies were and how the world was out in the real world. So I thought eventually, like, if I don't work at Landmark, that's going to be all of this is like going to prepare me for what to expect in future jobs. And every job I've had since then has not been like that, right? It's never been like that. Nobody deals with me or dealt with me the way I ever was dealt with. So I also was told though, but see, I'd never had another job, right? Like when I started, Landmark was my very first job, so I didn't know what to I compare it to. I had never worked. So, and they loved that. They loved that because it was like they could get away with anything.
Yeah.
People would leave, and I'd be like, God, why are they leaving? This is just like, what they can't handle how it is in life. Then I go to a job right after Landmark that is like, my boss was like, thank you so, at the end of the day, literally, she'd say, thank you for everything you did today. Thank you so much. And I remember telling my mom, and people would be like, oh my God, she thanks me every day for what I did. Oh my God, this woman's a saint. Like how her saying thank you was like just for what I did. And then if I didn't do something, right, I was like freaking out. She'd be like, it's okay. You're good. Like people make mistakes. That
Oh,
I've never heard that in Landmark. People make mistakes. That was like foreign language to me. And I
I
was like,
still get so much panic when I do something wrong in
yes,
whatever I'm doing in my job. If I'm like, I have to realize that it's totally incongruent to what's happening in the moment, but it's still there.
oh, it's still there for me too. I mean, I have like I water plants, right, in a building. And there's a woman who she'll message me sometimes and be like, hey, this plant isn't looking good, right? And the moment that text comes in, my heart drops. I feel like and I have to text her back real fast and give an explanation as to why it was that way. And I'll get on top of it. It won't happen again. And you can count on me and la, 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 la. And it's still there. I mean, I was dealing with that before this call. Like just the fear of her even texting me, right? Like, cause I was worried. So it still lives in the body. It's still there. It's very real, and you're conditioned. They want you to be conditioned that way because when you work there, it's really then you're the one monitoring your own self. You're like
Mhm. You
and it's
police yourself.
police your own self. Yeah, you
Yeah.
do, and they don't have to do it for you. Which means they're really makes them really masterful at what they do. You
Oh,
know.
totally. Yeah, they use integrity as like a trap for
Oh, the
ourselves
integrity. And then
that,
we had to create integrity lists. We had to create lists of out of integrities. They would have us write it
oh
out.
God.
And it would get submitted to Joan Rosenberg and it would be on file. Like we would have a file, and then at one point we had a Excel spreadsheet that we would update weekly that went to our center manager where we would put in our out of integrities. And so the also like overly like getting into your personal life, right? Like knowing them knowing every single thing about you, right? If you were, I mean, listen, I, some people were a little bit more willing to put things on there than like I was like, yeah, no. I started doing that. I was like, I was burned the very first list out of integrity list I ever created, got scanned into Joan Rosenberg, and I realized, oh, this is how that is. So anyone asked me to put a list, I would write whatever I could to not put the truth on there, right? Because I knew it was crazy. Like in the back of my mind when I worked there, I knew I was a little bit rebellious. I mean, I was 18, 19, 20, 21, right? I was in that age of like finding myself, finding my voice, like speaking up for myself. But I never did get to the speaking up for myself point when I worked there. Like I would try and then I would get hot and I would shake and I would feel like I couldn't speak, right? And
Mhm.
so because I again was trained to not talk back, and
Well,
so
and it wasn't safe. It wasn't a safe place for you to do that. So no wonder you were.
yeah, there was no and God, what a toxic environment it was. Like I just really when I even talk about it, I just think, about all those moments. But yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you had more questions too. I don't wanna
Well, what I'm curious between like leaving staff and then assisting, like
Yeah.
how did you maintain your relationships with people at the center and your center manager while you were assisting?
Well, it was easy for me to do because people, when you start assisting again, they stop treating you the way they treated you when you worked there. Like it just changes. Like I don't know how to explain it, but they know they can't get away with, like dealing with you, I guess, when you're volunteering or when I mean, they still did. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still was expected to operate at a higher level because I was a former staff member, right? But it became more of like, oh, how can we use him? He's a high trained individual. Like, how can we use him for to benefit us? And so I was actually okay. I was able to maintain the relationships and with my center manager for me assisting a lot of that was a fuck you to him, to be honest. Like it
Mm.
was my way of showing him, like, look, mother effer, look at me now, right? Like I am still here. I'm doing well. I have a good job. When I started creating my business, it's like I've been I have a great business, right? And he would say things to me like, oh wow, look at you. You were on TV. Or look at your business. I saw your business here. Or I heard you did this. And I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big I was very clear that it was that. It wasn't healthy, but I did it, and I wanted it really in a weird way, it was a little healing for me. But then but then it wasn't, right? Because I was also still constantly in fear of like him dealing with me or like telling me I didn't do something or me having to account to him. And I'm like, I'm volunteering. Like I'm not getting paid at all. So it was it was an interesting experience. When I left staff, everything got ripped away from me, right? All of my relationships, my friendships, everybody that I had known, all was gone. And I was like, I'm never gonna get that again. So I had to do something to get back in, right? I
Mhm.
started volunteering and assisting because um
It's
that
your
was
community.
it
Like,
was my community, and it was like it was the only way I could feel like normal, because if I didn't have that, I thought I was gonna die. I mean, it felt like that. And so, and then over the years, things obviously change and you realize, and people leave, and, you start seeing like, oh, I think there was like four staff members after me that were in my same accountability that got let go or left, right? And because of this, for the same reasons, then I started going like, oh, so it wasn't me, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't that I was a bad staff member. It's the system that's really, really broken. And I would really call it out for what it was. Like when I was volunteering or assisting with people, I would be like, that's kind of abusive. Like I would say things like that to them. I'd be like, that's not normal. Like, like him yelling at you or doing that is not okay. Like I felt like I
Yeah.
was kind of, I in a weird way, felt like I was like infiltrating from the inside.
So great.
I,
Totally.
I don't know. It was like my little thing I could do.
You're
And
like a double agent.
yeah, but it was really triggering for me too, because I had some interactions with forum leaders and with the center manager, who was still there and still is there, but that were not great. And I had my partner, my husband Josh, was assisting one time, and the center manager started to proceed to process him about why he hadn't had a registration conversation with someone. And I was in on that same call, and I went out. I lost it a little bit. I really was like, You're not about to talk to him that way too, right? Like I've been through enough." And so,
Yeah.
and it left him. Like my husband was like scared. I mean, he was like really scared. But you want to know how messed up it is? You want to know how messed up and how indoctrinated I was? I then tried to coach him to give it another chance,
Yeah.
because I thought, this is not, that's not what it is. Like, so even watching him being like yelled at, right? Again, it was like I was still trying to say, well, no, 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 you gotta, it's just, you gotta try again. You gotta keep going. You gotta give it another chance, right? I wasn't like, no, that's messed up. Don't come back, right? Like, I was
Well,
like,
again, it's the boundaries thing, right? Like,
yeah,
it's like we
yeah,
get really like, oh, no, no.
right,
Our training is so about making it all seem good and okay. It's like a reflexive,
yeah,
can't help it. Gotta normalize this. No, no, no. I know that experience was bad, but it's not
yes,
really like that. That person was just this that day and had
yes,
this thing going on for themselves. And,
right,
like all the
right.
excuses in the world.
Yeah, it was that. And then in the last year, I guess it's been a year, like since Anne wrote her book. And for the book was where I started to go, oh, I started seeing a lot more. And when I started hearing from other people, and now, like, people like you and everyone who's been through a similar experience, that just changed my whole like view of it, right? And I'm like, okay. So now I feel like I see it very clearly for what it is, but even 2 years ago I didn't, not fully, and I didn't fully deal with the trauma of the being working there, like I just felt like I was going to have that for the rest of my life. I really, and I don't have to, right? I'm realizing I don't have to, and I've got to talk about it and do the right, things. But, um, but yeah,
I
it's,
yeah. I like until I read Anne's book, I hadn't been participating for probably about 8 years because the last seminar I did two. I did Sex and Intimacy,
uh,
which really fucked me up. Really inappropriate for someone dealing with sexual childhood
oh yeah,
trauma. Seminar leader had no idea. And then I
yeah,
did the money seminar, which I just did because I wanted to stay with the people in my seminar group. I
yeah,
loved them so much. But
yeah,
really, they both like one fucked me up and one gave me absolutely nothing. And I was like, okay, enough of this.
yeah,
I'm broken. I must be fucked up. Like, it's true. I'm just too fucked up that transformational work doesn't even work on me.
uh,
And it really sent me into a spiral. For years of just thinking I was hopeless,
yeah,
really, like I was a lost cause. And
yeah,
then and, like, my husband and I are both would, like, you know, be like, "Oh, fuck Landmark," like, "Fuck Landmark," where, like, things would come up. And then we read Anne's book, and we were like, I wasn't broken.
Right.
I'm not fucked up.
Yeah.
No, the company, the technology is broken and fucked up. And
Yeah.
it's just been like the freedom
Mhm.
to feel my feelings and think my thoughts and not be like, oh God, that's broken Lindsay. That's,
Mhm.
fucked up Lindsay.
Uh-huh.
Like, no, that's authenticity actually
Yeah.
coming out.
Yeah. Like the real authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing.
That's good. Yeah, yeah, it's been freeing, I think people the more we share, right, and the more we put it out there, there's so many people that don't even probably know that that book exists, right? Or that that this is what's going on, right? I don't think there's just so many people that are out there that don't know, right? And
Well, I didn't find out about Anne's book for, like 9, 10 months till after it came out.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's why I'm doing the podcast and the book. It's like I want
right.
people to know. I want other people to know out there who were like me going, God, I'm so fucked up. Landmark couldn't even help me.
Yeah.
Like, no, no, honey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really good, and we have to keep doing it because Landmark really is hoping it goes away, right? That this just is a phase, right? Because they've gone through lots of ups and downs, but they are so outdated they don't realize social media is a lot more powerful, right? Than any kind of like whatever they've had happen in the past, right? Where they've had like what is it, 60 seconds, interview for, like
Oh
they've had
yeah.
strategies, right? Where they've been able to like move past it. But this is 2025 and we have social media and we've got, and people are also in a way different mindset than they were 30 years ago, right? About abuse and about, and calling it out. So, it's powerful, to just keep having conversations like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, I guess what the last thing I'd want to know is really like what is there any last words that you wish people understood about Landmark's impact on teens and kids and
Yeah.
what even you would like you wish your 13-year-old self knew?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think well, I'm grateful that Landmark isn't doing programs, right, anymore for the teens and young people. I will say that. Yeah, I don't think anything needs I think what we've shared is has been
Yeah,
has been really
it's a lot.
clear about the impact that it could have, right? As if you yeah, I think that's good and just the thing is just Landmark is not committed to what they say they're committed to. Like they really solely exist to empower their bank accounts and Warner Earhart's bank account and for his legacy to be thought of as like, or for him to have a legacy,
Yeah, his
right?
ego.
Yeah, for him to be thought of as somebody who was a pioneer, and that is not the case, right? And so, that's what I want people to really know, right? Is that it's a front. Um, just like Scientology, who says that the people that are in it really think they're making some big difference, right? They think that there's all these amazing things happening because of them. Same with the church, just like any high control group. So, um, yeah, yeah,
Well, it's great that they're not doing the teen
right.
and kid programs anymore. But although I did hear that you can do the form for adults if you're 15.
Oh wow.
So I've got to check into that a bit more because that's
Yeah, I think
really
I heard that too.
I would
Yeah,
love for them to raise it to at least 21. Like
right.
25 would be optimal. I think like let's let our
Brain is fully
prefrontal
yeah,
lobe
yeah,
let our
yeah,
brain fully develop before we start messing with it. But yeah.
yeah, they've gotta be more responsible. Talking about responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much irony.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much,
of
Brandon.
course.
It's been really amazing to talk to you. It feels
Me
so
too.
cathartic to hear other people's experience, especially being young and just
Yeah,
like how consuming it really becomes.
yeah, thanks. You created a great space to be able to share.